Mhm.
Okay, I am so pumped to have Gerry. When I was setting this up, I had to hunt her down really hard
Sorry.
to lock this in. But when I started working actually with Gerry, it was very evident that your approach to, your craft, whether it's writing or marketing or, all the things in between, that it was always such an art, but so you made it very easy. And I think for most of us, where it doesn't feel like it comes that easy, I think, am I making sense right now? You make it seem very easy. So it was obvious, like, you have a lot to share because I also get very excited for your newsletters. I think they're hilarious. And so with email marketing, I think so many times people think I don't want to spam people and it's so salesy. And I think the way you approach all of this is just so human and natural and authentic that there's so many nuggets I know you're going to be able to share. And so it was like just a given that you needed to be part of the presentations for 2026. So um, with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'll make sure everyone's, if there's anything in the chat, I'll help kind of point that out and stuff. But yeah, with that, I'm excited to
Excellent.
dive in.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I wish I could just have that like following me around. Like everywhere I went, I just have someone giving a lovely introduction. Like, wouldn't that be amazing? But I'm so happy to be here today to yap about two of my favorite things, emails and stories. Can everyone see the presentation? Okay, the screen? Yes. Thumbs up in the chat. Amazing. Okay. So I am Gerry. I'm a copywriter and an email fangirl. Seriously, my email list is basically my entire personality. Might be slightly sad to admit that. But my business started because someone liked the emails I wrote for my previous business, and they asked me to write theirs. And the rest, as they say, is inbox history. I also have two little boys, ages 8 and 10. I guess that's not really little anymore. So if you're running a business while also raising kids, or maybe you're supporting older parents, I totally get it. And today I want to help you start or get back into emailing your list in a way that feels good for you and for your business. So I would love to know who here has an email list, and are you actually emailing them? um, and who here is thinking about starting one, but maybe not quite sure yet? If you can pop it in the chat or give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down. So for the people who have a list already, let me know if you have ever stared at a blinking cursor while you were trying to write one. Maybe cleaned your bathroom instead of writing one. Or every time you hit send, you're wondering if you are just annoying everyone. Um, if so, you're not alone. And if any of that sounds familiar, you're totally in the right place. And we're going to make story based emails feel way less intimidating and way more enjoyable today. Before we get into the content, I just want you to remember that your business and your marketing is personal. I am going to share my experience and my expertise as an email strategist and copywriter, but every aspect of your marketing has to work for you, your values, and your life in order for it to feel good and feel sustainable. So please take what works for you, adjust what makes sense for you, and just leave the rest. Here's what we're going to dive into today. We will cover why story-driven emails work long-term, why they make emailing and selling easier, the missing piece that most people skip, and how to find stories even if you think you're boring, and lastly, how to structure and refine them. Now, people come to me for help when email feels hard. Typically, they're like, I just don't know what to say every week. And they're so scared of sounding salesy. They feel like they're bothering people, even though everyone on your list actively chose to be there by subscribing. And they often feel like they're boring or their emails are too repetitive to be effective. And you know what helps all of these concerns is telling stories. And here's why. They are personal. When it feels like everyone out there is saying the same thing, your stories, your viewpoints, and your experiences can set you apart. They're endless. It's hard to run out of things to say when you're pulling from your own lived experience. They're human. Storytelling is the oldest form of communication for humans. It's a really effective way to impart information, but stories are also engaging and they're easier to remember than just straight facts. They're also flexible. This presentation isn't about telling you one way to send an email. I don't tell a story in the typical sense in every single email I write, but it's a way to approach email writing that helps you make your emails your own. So that's all helpful for you right now, but how about in the long term? Story-driven emails build connection over time. Trust is not built in a single email. It compounds week after week, story after story. And when your emails are engaging and easy to read, people open them more and reply to them more. You become known, trusted, and liked. That builds familiarity, there we go, in the inbox and in your readers' minds. Story-driven emails also make selling feel so much easier and more natural. So many business owners find selling awkward because it feels like you're trying to convince someone to spend money on you. But when you ground your marketing in stories, in lived experience, in relatability, connection, you build an actual relationship with your audience. So you're not coming in hot being like, you need this or else. You're saying, hey, I see you. I've been there. Here's what I found helpful, and here's how it could help you too. And that's a totally different energy. So when someone sees themselves in your story, when they feel understood and they think, oh, she gets it, then you build that genuine trust. And the more they trust you, the more likely they are to buy from you. So there are tons of different ways to tell stories in emails, and some of them really hit and some of them totally flop. Here are a few common mistakes. Telling the entire backstory. It's like that super long slideshow from your aunt's vacation. Like, you don't need to see the hotel bathroom to know that she met a new friend at dinner the first night. You want to zoom in on the part of the story that the reader needs to know in order to understand the message. Sometimes people tell a random story and don't connect it back to something the reader cares about. So it's just like, cool story, bro. Like, what's the point? And lastly, storytelling is effective because it can set up a sell without having to always say, buy my thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I say that often, but it's good to have variety, you know? You don't have to force every story to a direct sell. You just have to relate it back to the journey your ideal client is on right now. Which brings us to the piece that a lot of emailers miss, which is the overlap. And as you can see from my super scientific diagram, the power of story-driven emails lives in the overlap between your experience and your reader's experience. So where is the overlap? It can be in a feeling they're feeling that you felt, a problem they're facing that you've navigated, a desire they have that you've achieved, a method you use that they're trying to learn. But it doesn't always have to be something you've mastered or already overcome. In fact, it's like way more human to share the in-between, something you're navigating right now that they can relate to, something you're experimenting with now that they could use down the line, or a feeling you're currently deciphering. Now, why does this work? Because it provides connection between you and the reader. It's saying, hey, we both relate to this thing. It validates their experience, it shows you understand them, it builds genuine authority, and it sets up your work as a logical solution. This is what takes storytelling from random to strategic without making it feel slimy or forced. So grab a Google Doc or a piece of paper, and we'll just do a short brainstorming exercise to help you find your overlap. Cute baby. Okay, so think about your ideal client. And if you're like, who's my ideal client? Come and see me after class. I'm kidding, but think of someone you've worked with recently who was a dream. It felt natural. They had great results, stuff like that. Now, with this person in mind, write down one struggle they're facing or that they faced before they worked with you. one feeling they're experiencing, and one desire that they have. But we really want to make this specific. So if you're stuck at high level stuff, you're going to run out of ideas really fast. So instead of something like, they don't have enough clients, drill down further into what that looks like in their day to day. They're constantly posting on social media and not seeing results. They're writing and rewriting their website copy. They're not taking a vacation this year because they don't have enough income. They might feel exhausted, overworked, frustrated, left out, disappointed, embarrassed, ashamed. They might want more aligned leads, to be able to say no to red flag clients, to feel proud about their business, to take their kids on their first plane ride. So I'll give you a couple minutes to just jot some of those down. And now we want to find your side of the overlap. So pick one of the ideas from your ideal client, one struggle, one feeling, one desire, and ask yourself, when have I felt like this? When did I navigate something similar? Or even when did I feel the opposite? Because contrast is also a great way to fuel understanding. And again, we want to be super specific. So let's say you're focusing on feeling embarrassed. This one is right for storytelling, and it doesn't have to be business related at all, because this is about the human experience of embarrassment. Did you poop your pants in winters? Did you flash an entire cafe while learning to breastfeed? Did you get aggressively dumped? Have something stuck in your teeth? And yes, these are all things that have happened to me. So take a few minutes to write down these ideas. Okay, cool. So, whatever you're writing about, remember to ask yourself this key question: how does this connect to my reader? How does it connect to their experiences, their feelings, their wants, and their awareness level? Do they need help seeing the real problem they're facing? Do they need help seeing why your solution is different from stuff they've tried in the past? Because your offer is directly tied to your reader, your ideal client. And because that is, when you make your story relevant to them, it's also relevant to how you help them. So, the number one resistance to telling stories in email is this: but Gerry, my life is so boring. And what I always say to that is perfect, because yes, storytelling can be about these big life moments, but it can also be about the little mundane details that make life what it is. Literally everything can be turned into a story. You know, the line at Costco becomes that feeling of waiting or being impatient. The super drab gray of your cubicle walls is about hating where you are right now or the effect of your environment on your mood. The thing your kid said before bed last night becomes talking about having to think really hard when you're already drained or not knowing how to respond. A question a client asked you becomes, reframing a myth or offering a totally new way forward that your readers maybe haven't thought of yet. So now that you are hopefully bursting with ideas, it's really important to know how to actually structure the email. And there are lots of ways to do this, but I wanted to show you a structure that's a really good place to start. So I always suggest that you start with the story. Make it as specific as possible, because this is what pulls the reader in and keeps them reading. Then you show the connection to the reader. It's like you're holding up a mirror so they can see themselves in your story. This collapses that distance between you, brings you closer together. And so they have like an impetus to, again, keep reading. And then you want to talk about the meaning. You expand on that parallel between the two situations so that it's really clear. Then you highlight that big takeaway, that thing that you want them to understand. That might be a mindset shift or a new how to do something, or a differentiator you want to kind of hone in on. This is the sort of aha moment. And then you help them move or take action with a call to action. And yes, this can absolutely be let's work together or join my course or whatever. But it can also be, remember whatever that message was. Or ask for a reply. Have you felt something similar? Whatever fits with your overall business goals at the time. So this is really cool in theory, right? But let's see it in action. I will pop this. Wait, can I do that? Can I pop this in the chat? I'm not sure. It will be in the slide deck that you get after the presentation. But anyway, I wrote a story about getting ghosted by a guy. And I think this is something that everyone can relate to. And so I start out with, setting up the scene, how it felt, what I was thinking, really like painting the picture of what happened. And then how he just one day, poof, disappeared. And I connected that to how, yes, you get ghosted by your buyers, but sometimes it just feels like they're not responding to you. You're on totally different wavelengths. Your posts are getting crickets, your emails aren't getting any replies, whatever. The point is they have their own process and their own timeline. Just like that guy, he had his own reasons. He just chose not to communicate them with me. And the readers of your email won't always reply back and be like, hey, I really like this, but I'm not ready to buy yet. Right? Most of the time, they just won't say anything. They're just going to keep reading. And because we don't know that, it's hard to just keep going, to keep emailing. But that is the sales process. And so I brought that parallel between these two situations. And the message I really wanted them to take home is it's not necessarily that you're being ignored. You're being remembered on their timeline. Okay, they're going to go through their own process of getting to know you and liking you and trusting you. And maybe they really want to work with you, but the budget's just not there right now. You don't know. And so what I really wanted them to do to take that action is to just keep showing up. And keep reminding people that you're there and keep reminding them how you can help. And now at the end of this, like I didn't explicitly say, I can help you with this, but sharing my perspective on the sales process positioned me as someone who has a perspective. And then the people who resonate with that will be like, cool, like how can I work with her? Or cool, I'll keep reading next week. And yeah, so this is an example of like, we can tell a story and it is contributing to making a sale, but it might not be a direct sale. We don't have to force it every single time. Okay, so a couple of tips before we close out today, because a lot of people tell me that they're writing, they want to write, but then the words come out and it just doesn't really sound like them. And when they find it hard to sound like themselves, they find it hard to keep writing because it just feels weird and then they give up. So telling your own stories already helps you to find your own voice because they're stories that only you can tell. But it's also important to remember that being professional doesn't mean being stuffy or formal. It means being reliable and doing quality work. And you can do that with sentence fragments or swear words or jokes, as long as those things fit who you are as a personal brand. When we write, we tend to say too much. We feel like we have to explain ourselves because we're not getting immediate responses. And so instead, we write everything out and then go back and edit it. Take out everything that you don't need in order to communicate your message. That was backwards. Take out everything that isn't directly related to the message. What words are unnecessary? What words are too fancy or too vague? Can you say it in a more straightforward way? Because that clarity is always better than a super creative way of saying it. Writing the words that you actually use when you're talking in real life makes your copy sparkle with like you-ness. So for example, what do you say when you're excited? Do you say, "Oh my God, I'm so jazzed," or "Oh, I'm pumped," or "I'm beside myself"? You know, use that, because that's one of those little things that will set you apart from everyone else. Finally, like, reading your writing out loud not only is a great way to catch typos and check for clarity, but it's also a way to check your voice. Like, does it sound like something you would actually say in conversation? Or does it feel like you're presenting an essay in English class with like a teacher breathing down your neck? And when it comes to refining your emails, here are some key tips to remember. Write one message to one person. Stay on track with the point that you're trying to make. And remember that even though your email is going out to lots of people, hopefully, each one lands in one inbox. We want it to feel like one-to-one personal communication, because that's what it is. They're literally opening it beside, you know, a note from their kid's teacher, or a friend group chat or whatever. When you're telling a story, a really great way to make it even punchier is to start in the middle. Because if you say something like, "I felt her eyes on me as soon as I walked in," that's so much more engaging than, "The other day I was thinking about embarrassment," you know? And kind of in the same vein, use emotions and sensory details in your story. It doesn't have to be like a full story arc or like major character development. It can be about describing one moment in time really clearly so that people can picture themselves there. You know, what did it smell like? What colors were there? What were you thinking? What was that inner monologue that was going on in your head? Next, keep paragraphs short. Most people read emails on their phone, and even a paragraph of like 3 sentences can look like a wall of text. So we really want to break those up. Use bold italics and GIFs if you want. I love a GIF. Because this formatting helps to express what you're saying. You know, if you want to emphasize something, you can put an italics on it. If you want to call out a line that's like your key takeaway from the email, put it in bold and leave it in its own paragraph. And this formatting helps people skim for those skimmers, and it also just helps people read more quickly and more efficiently by giving some breaking up the text for the eye. And last but definitely not least, keep experimenting, keep writing. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was your email list. It will take time to find your voice, to learn how to tell these stories, to see what lands with your readers and refine your personal approach. But as someone who has consistently emailed for over 2 years now, I can tell you that it gets easier, faster, and way more fun as you go. Okay, thank you so much for listening and like staying here all the way to the end. To get you started on your storytelling journey, I have a resource for you with 40 strategic email ideas, and they come with 40 subject lines because people always tell me that's one of the hardest parts of email. I would love to answer any questions if you have them, and I will also try to grab that link for that email so you can see what the heck I was actually talking about.
Thank you so much, Gerry. Honestly, I love that there's high level stuff and then there's actual framework that you have shared in here. So I feel like it's not just the concept that you have talked about. You've actually said, like, and here's how you're going to actually execute it.
Yeah.
I do have a couple questions, but I can save mine till the end. I want to make sure everyone here gets a chance to ask whatever it is that's on the top of their mind. So just you can just remove yourself off mute and just ask away.
Hi, Gerry. Claire here. I love your presentation. It's so well laid out. So I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. And my question is about frequency of newsletters, or e-newsletters. Is there
Mhm.
sort of I mean, you don't want to bombard people, but you don't want to leave it too infrequently. So what are your thoughts on that?
I love a weekly newsletter. And I think with the bombarding, remember that they chose to sign up for your email list, and that you are not like, when you're giving them a new perspective, when you're giving them a piece of information, when you're sharing part of yourself with someone, like, you're helping them. It's entertaining. Like, before we, or no, maybe it was part of your intro, Meredith, you said you look forward to my email, which is like literally the best thing I could ever hear. But like, it can be a bright spot. And I think people get so worried about this idea that like, oh, my inbox is so full, I don't want to do that to other people. But they're in control of their inbox. They can unsubscribe. They can not read this week's email if they're not in the mood. They have autonomy too, as a buyer and as a subscriber. And so I would say doing less than a week every week is not ideal, because you want that consistency. You want to be showing up at the inbox so that people get familiar with it. And if you're launching something, then it's going to be even more frequent. Does
That's
that
great.
answer your question?
Yep, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question, comment?
Hi there. I have a quick question.
Hi.
I was wondering about if I have, events and workshops and promotions coming up, should I send out like a separate one of like offers in addition to like a nurture sequence, or should I put in, at the end of an email for consistency, upcoming events, or, like what would your strategy around that be?
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like I think with some emails I've received, I kind of gloss over. I just skip the bottom part because I know it's just all offers. So I
Mm-hmm.
wondered, how to balance that.
Mm-hmm. I love to build it into what you're talking about. Your story or your email body will directly relate to the upcoming workshop that you're giving, for example. And so that will give them more reason to actually click, right? If you set up the email as sort of the question, then clicking and registering for your workshop is the answer, if that makes sense. If you have, like, say, a launch, I don't know if you do courses or programs or something like that, then I would have a period before that is your pre-launch period, usually about 4 to 6 weeks. And that can just still be your one weekly newsletter, but it's going to be focused on getting people ready to purchase that thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be like, hey, I have this thing coming. Hey, I have this thing coming. But you're speaking to the ideas that bridging them from, where they are right now to where they need to be in order to say yes to your offer. And then during that launch period, whatever that open cart is, some people keep it to a few days. Some people do 7 days. Some people have been doing longer now, just because it takes people longer in this economy to actually say yes to something, and they want to give people lots of time. But sort of the industry standard is like 7 day period, and that's at least an email a day.
Thank you for that. And one last little question is I'd love to hear your opinion about, Loom embedded type of like visual newsletters instead of having to sit and read them. For somebody like myself, I do really like those. And just wondered what your experience or appetite is around doing something like a video newsletter.
So this is again going to come back to that overlap. It's something that you enjoy doing and something you enjoy consuming yourself. And then we have to know, what do your readers prefer? So you can test it. You could ask and do a poll and see what people think. You could also have a bit of a combo. So like you're setting something up, and then the Loom is like a minute or two of you talking about the thing, right? And so that might speak to both types of people. It's really just going to have to be testing it and seeing it. But videos, GIFs, pictures are doing really well in email, just because of the variety of the media.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll ask my question. I have two, actually. So as somebody who is very like, okay, let's figure out the process for this, how do you go about doing yours? Is it like, do you carve out a time on Wednesday mornings, you show up and you're like, now's the time? Or are you doing things that help ease that process when you do go to write it? What does that look like for you?
So I am not a plan it in advance kind of person. I do have a time. Wednesday afternoon is always my email writing time because my email goes out at 7:10 a.m. on Thursday, come hell or high water, except for the Christmas break. I always take that off. So usually like on Monday, I might have just like a time, like a thing in my mind that's like, hey, what am I going to write about this week? Or if I'm seeing, I have a membership. So if I see like a question come in that's like, being repeated a lot, I'm like, oh, let's think about that. Or maybe something happened to me on the weekend. And I think, oh, how could that relate to something that's going on with my clients right now, or with people that I'm talking to on DMs right now, something like that. I do have a notes thing where if I randomly think of something, I will jot it down. And then I have to make sure to actually use those. But yeah, I do have a few people in my membership who like to set up a quarterly plan. And so they'll send me like, here's, first thing I always ask them is, what are you selling right now? Or what will you be selling in this quarter? And then we think about where, the buyer journey for that. What do people need to understand? What do people need to feel in order to actually purchase that thing? And then we'll kind of work backwards to make sure that those stories and email ideas are strategic. And so then they will have, this week, each an idea, maybe a story thing that's going to relate to it, and what the call to action is. And then that will help them flow towards their overall business goals for that quarter.
Got it. Thank you. And then I have another question. So everything, and I'm sure you hear this a lot too, like this whole AI phenomenon. I mean, I hear it from everyone where I was like, I was able to, fire this person because I can just have AI do it. Or I've taken this over myself because I can have AI do it. And I guess I just want to hear what your perspective is on the use of AI for something like this, and where you feel like it has a place or doesn't have a place, or how to use it properly, because it's not going away. So yeah, just your thoughts.
Yeah. So I mean, everyone will have their own sort of like moral and ethical views on AI. I use it in my business mostly from a brainstorming, connection finding thing. When I get writing back from chat, I have trained mine to sound like me, but it still doesn't totally sound like me. So sometimes I'll take a bit of a concept that I've done a back and forth. I like to use it as like, if I wasn't a solopreneur, I would have someone that I worked with, and I can chat with them about, hey, I'm thinking about like this idea, but like, how can I communicate that in a way that they'll understand, right? And it's just a back and forth. It's like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? And then once we come out of that, I usually have an idea of what I want to say, and then I can write it. Right. A lot of people that I work with do use AI to write their newsletters, and I can see some gaps. Usually it's not specific enough. Usually it's not personal enough. And I don't mean personal in terms of oversharing something that you don't want to say, but it tends to come at it from like kind of this is how people think about it versus this was my experience. Right. And those two things just land differently. And talking about your own personal experience will always resonate more than, this is how I think about something, or this is why these people think this and I think this. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think when it comes to writing, a lot of people have had concerns about, I don't want my writing to sound like ChatGPT.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things here. The first one is that ChatGPT uses copywriting frameworks because they work. So the sort of classic, it's not this, it's this.
Yep.
Or, a few short lines of like, not this, not this, not this, but this. That is a very well-known approach. Or it's like, a sentence that ends in threes. It's like the rule of three has been used since the dawn of writing time. So it's not that these things are bad, it's that they're now overused because people have access to a tool that people who weren't writers or weren't trained in writing didn't have access to before. And that's really cool, right? I love that people have access to it. So if you don't want your writing to sound like AI, you want to notice those things. And then what's really important is actually knowing what you want to say, because then you can tweak it. Then you can take that sentence and change it without changing the meaning. And I think just like being confident in what you're saying and being like, yeah, okay, I used something to help me. Like, that's okay. Um, as long as the idea makes sense to you and you know what you're talking about and you can still help people with the thing, I think it's good. And also, this is also where storytelling, I think, comes in, because you can say, hey, I want to tell a story about the time I slipped on the ice and broke my nose, but it won't have, what you were thinking, what those details were, like how Steve made fun of you for 8 days afterward. You know what I mean? Like, so bringing in that personal detail will show, like, maybe you're using AI for a strategic perspective, but this is still my writing.
Yeah. When you were talking about the stories and figuring out how it connects to the reader, for me, that's where I sort of know, I'm like, I know this could go somewhere. So I send chat
Yes.
like a voice note, so that like, and kind of like just say like, hey,
Yes.
this is sort of what I'm thinking. Like, am I on the right path? What is the connection here? So I could see
Totally.
it being really helpful for me there for sure.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
one thing that I think like both you and I see is like an overuse, as you said, on AI, is starting to remove this human factor,
Mm-hmm.
and authentic sounding voice. And so I think it's just really important to be aware that what works is what's authentic and personal and you. And so the more we are overusing AI, you're removing the actual factor of what moves the needle, right? And actually creating
Yes.
more friction. So yes, it's free, but you're really taking a gamble on the quality, like not the quality, but like the performance.
The effectiveness.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think that's why you have to know the point that you're trying to make,
Mhm.
and like using it as a helper as opposed to like they know best.
Yes.
Um, and tying in your voice. Like sometimes you can get an email from them, like you've asked it, and then you can go through and like rewrite it how you would say it.
Right.
Think of a specific sentence, say it out loud. And it's like, no, I would say this instead.
Right.
Um, so then you're using their wisdom and
Yeah.
combining it with your wisdom,
Yeah.
and still coming up with something that is personal, and which is what's so cool about email, because it can be so much more personal than an Instagram story, for example, or an Instagram post, like, because you can go into more detail. And it almost feels a bit safer, because even though you're sending it to a bunch of people, you're imagining one person opening it, and it kind of calms the nervous system a little bit, right? You're not putting it on blast for the like potentially the whole like social media network to see. Like, it's like, oh, I'm writing to Gerry right now.
Right.
And that's often what I tell people if you're stuck with what to say. It's like, hey, Gerry, I just wanted to tell you about this thing. And then you can go back and take that part out at the beginning, but it just helps you get out of that, like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone
You're
else
so
have any
welcome.
questions, thoughts? I think that might be it, Gerry.
Okay, amazing.
Thank you so much for this. And as I said, I already have your presentation, so I'll be sending out the presentation and the replay. Definitely going to snag subject lines. Oh my gosh, I spent so much time on those. So I can't wait to get my hands on those. So thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone
You're so
for
welcome.
coming. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Okay,
Take
bye
care.
everyone.